Hello everyone and welcome to another devlog video for the procedural city generator. I've been working on this update for the past few weeks, trying to push as hard as I can, and the 1.2 update is almost ready to be released. So I wanted to give you guys a quick update on where we are and maybe take a very short look at kind of everything that's included in this update, just to give you an idea of the amount of work and how much better PCG is after the update. So if I drag my Trello board here, this is what I use to keep track of everything that we've been working on. You can see that I can go all the way back to that initial release here. But if we focus on this column here, this is the 1.2 update, everything that is done. You can see that there is quite a bit. So looking here, we have the chaos destruction that I've shown you in an earlier devlog. You can use a very simple component to destroy your buildings, but not just your buildings, pretty much any kind of mesh very easily. It'll literally take you just a few minutes to make one building destructible. I've added things like the city presets, and actually I'm gonna show you guys here on the interface. It's a lot easier. So I've added the city presets, which you can see here. Right here, there's a new section called presets. And basically the idea is that you may find certain settings for your city that you want to somehow save if you're generating multiple cities of the same style. So now there are two different types of presets. There is a preset for the road segment, and you click here, you can see there's anything from very dense to very sparse, and this is driven by a data table, which is interesting. So if I open the data table here, you can see that we have the same presets. Each preset is a row. So if I look at, for example, the default preset for the roads, all you're doing is defining the segment length for all of these different types of rows. This is the distance between each of the spline points, right? A road segment. This is the default value that you have there right now. And now I'm giving you guys the option to make your city, for example, more dense by making this number smaller, or super dense, right? If you're trying to make something very dense where the roads are very close to each other, or maybe you're making a mega city where everything is big, including all the buildings, and you want to make sure that the roads are actually more sparse. So you can do that. And then there's also a city type preset, and if you click here, you can see that we have by default 4 different presets. This is also driven by a data table, like you can see here. And you can see that each row name has, the style. So Metropolitan, for example, all of these presets basically mean that you get to choose the generation preset for the roads, the spawn density for the roads, the percent chance to spawn for the minor and side roads, and then whether we have cul-de-sacs or not, and the percent chance. These are all presets that you can access on the advanced tab here, right? But if you wanted to have certain specific types that you wanted to save, then you can do that. And obviously the implication is that you can add new rows to the data table, and you can make whatever presets you want, and then all you need to do is restart this widget, and then you'll have all of your custom categories that appear on the drop down here. The other thing that's cool is that finally I added layer support for landscapes. Even though it is experimental, I have found that using landscapes without layers results in a much better result for the city. So I'm still recommending you do not use layers to generate PCG, the city, and then you can add layers afterwards and add your own changes on top. But regardless, this is a pretty big pain to do right now, where you have to go to a specific asset. So for example, if you select this road here, and I go down to the landscape section here, you'll see that right now we have an edit layer name, which right now is none, meaning that we don't use any layers. But if I wanted to use a layer, all I would need to do is just enable it here by clicking the checkbox here, and you'll see that the road now has the layer name that we have right here for the roads. And you can see that the buildings will also have their own layer name. So obviously this is a text box. You can change the layer names to whatever you want. But the point is that now all you need to do is change it here and enable it or disable it. And you can see when I disable it here, then it goes back to the edit layer name to none. Before, you actually had to go to the base blueprint and change it in code, which again was a huge pain. That is no longer the case. You also have the landscape layer information that you can see here. This is now also populated by a data table, which means that if you have other landscape layers that you want to add, you can just do it through here. So for example, here's the list. This is a data table. So you can see that I have the list right here, and you can add and remove as many as you want. So if you have a custom, much better landscape material that you have from Marketplace, and that material has all of these different layers, all you would have to do is come here and add the appropriate layers, and that will automatically be populated to all of the roads and buildings. And then you can set it up that way. So way easier. We have a lot of changes for the zones, even though there's nothing in the menu here. But the biggest change was that you can now set the shape of the zone by using a spline. That is also the case for the city limits when you spawn your city limits. So before, you had the primitives, which were the square or rectangle, the circle, and the triangle, which was good enough. But now you can have any custom shape by using a spline, and that will give you guys a lot more flexibility in the way that you want to obviously spawn your city and spawn your zones. The other big thing, of course, was the sidewalks and the plots. So you see now that when you click on the roads tab, we have a new sub-tab called sidewalks, which again you guys have seen in the previous devlog. And you can spawn your sidewalks either in a procedural way, which is going to go through all of these types of rows and attempt to spawn these sidewalks or plots rather as you're going through in a batched manner. Or you can use the manual mode where you're basically looking at your city from a bird's eye view, and you can click anywhere where you want this plot to appear. So you have a lot of flexibility here, and obviously you can drag it and directly to the level, but this just makes things a little bit quicker. Also for buildings, we have a new tab for world partition, and this allows you to spawn your city basically in a manner that matches your world partition cells. So it'll spawn volumes that match each cell in world partition, and then you can decide to spawn your cities based on those cells. So if you have a massive mega city and you want to spawn certain parts of your city, you can do that. Then you can unload those cells, and then you can continue to generate your city from cell to cell to cell. And that way, even if you don't have a super powerful PC, you can spawn a massive city by using the world partition grid and using this special mode. The other thing, which is pretty big, is that I have been updating the way that zones are populated. Zones are now using, or can use rather, a data table. So if you can click here, you see that we have now a data table, and each of the zones has a row here. And you can see that all of the same settings that you would have for the city zone are here in the format of a data table. That means that it's going to be a lot easier for you to manage your settings or create custom zones, right? You can just add a new row, copy, for example, the commercial zone, name it something else, and just add your settings, your props, everything here. And then once you go to your city zone in the level, so right here I have the commercial zone, you'll see that we have, if I go scroll the way up, now we have a new setting here called load data table. And then if you select that yes, load it, you can then select the row name from the data table. So you have the option of using the data table, but you don't have to. You can still manipulate all of the settings here manually, as you've always done before. But if you rather use the data table, then you can obviously load it from a data table. So it's not really changing the workflow if you don't want it to, but I feel like this is a pretty big improvement as far as quality of life if you rather have everything in one table. It should also help you migrating, so when that 1.3 update comes up, if you haven't made a lot of changes to your buildings and things like that, you may be able to just migrate your data table, and then all of the things will be set up automatically for you. So that is obviously another reason for that. I've been working really hard on adding a better way of spawning props that goes for the fixed and the random props. I changed the logic significantly to spawn the props on a layered basis per road, and that means that the spawning of assets of props is a lot more accurate, and it allows you to have a lot more density. So if you look at, for example, a fixed prop here, for example, this is going to be the street light. Not only do we have all of the settings that we've had before, but now you notice that we have the actor class, static mesh, and collision bounds. But now, instead of having the regular settings, we are breaking down all the rest of the settings per road type. So if I expand the main road settings here, you can see that we have whether we want to spawn on that road or not, which we had before, and then the road buffer, scale, distance, etc. All of the settings that you had before are now bundled with the road type. That gives you a lot more flexibility. And the reason for that is because you may want to have different settings per road type per prop. So for example, for these lights here, I may want to have a distance of 3,000 units, so fairly dense, on main roads, but if I go to like a minor road, my distance is 4,000. So if you go to a minor road, maybe the lights aren't as frequent, they're going to be less frequent, there's going to be different spacing. Obviously, you can also change things like the scale, the buffer, or whether you want certain things to even spawn on that road. This is the same case for the random props. So for example, this is one of the vehicles, which I'll show you guys in a second, this cab. Now you can have, again, the same settings, and you can say for specific road types whether they can spawn or not, but you can also have a % chance to spawn per road type. So again, for a commercial zone, for a main road, I want these caps to be fairly consistent between 1 to 2,000 units with a 75% chance to spawn. So if you look at the main roads, they'll have a lot more cabs parked around compared to something like a side road where the distance is between 5 to 8,000 with only a 50% chance to spawn. So if you go looking for a side road, there will be some cabs that are going to be parked, but not as many. So that level of flexibility is now possible, which makes your city way more realistic, gives you more flexibility, obviously, and it prevents you from having to clone the same entry several times to change those settings. So it's way easier to configure and to get what you want. And obviously the next thing that you'll notice is that we have new vehicles. So before we only had this vehicle that you see here, this model here. I'll make the camera a little bit. And this is kind of the original vehicle that I had. I decided to add some of these vehicles from the city sample, as you can see here. I already had a tutorial on how to add it. It's not really difficult, but it's still a pain to try to configure it so they spawn as proper props, but you also want them spawning on houses, on driveways, etc. And if you have like a gas station, like in this case, maybe you want the same vehicles to spawn here. So all in all, I just kind of took the plunge, took all these vehicles and simplified them significantly to make sure that they use way simplified materials, basically reducing their memory footprint by more than half. So you still get the benefits of having the really nice nanite vehicles. They handle way better than the original one here, but now they don't cost as much. If you want the original materials, obviously you can go back and migrate them. But just to give you an idea, the vehicle sample project just for the vehicles is 8 gigabytes of memory, and I decided to import 4 vehicles, which is about 4 gigs, and I reduced that footprint like more than half. All of the vehicles are now like 800 megabits or less than that. So a significant decrease in memory, and you get pretty much all of the benefits that you would get. So now the city has way more variety of vehicles, and I took the opportunity to improve the vehicle blueprints themselves. So now some of these vehicles have a random material every time they spawn. And they have another things. So for example, if I click on play here, it's gonna take a little bit. This is a fairly big city. I was testing a large map. So as this loads up, so you'll see that some of these vehicles have the same kind of settings that we've had before, but I've just added some additional things to make the vehicle a little bit more fun to play. So obviously these are still fairly placeholder. If I'm sure you can get a much nicer vehicle system from the marketplace, but if you want something that is decent that already comes with PCG, that is kind of the purpose of these. Oops, 1 second here. I need to disable the. This is the. You can see the manual zone manager here. So you can see it right there. So I just need to go to roads, sidewalks, manual, and make it inactive. And now let's go. No, let me just swoop down there again. I don't even remember where I was. One of these roads, whichever. Here, and I'm going to press play again. And now we'll log into the game. So things like the ability to toggle the lights on and off, the ability to fix the car if you kind of crash and it's upside down, to kind of reset the car. I added some additional cameras, so not only can you look from outside and from the inside, but now you can have a reverse camera, for example, which is nice. And you can see that I even updated the player controls here. So I can join any of these cars. I can enter any of these cars. So let's just kind of enter this one here. Oops. Gonna stop the music. And you can see that the vehicle controls here are almost the same as before. Accelerate, brake, but now you can switch the camera from inside. And if you press R, you have a camera that looks at the back. You can toggle the lights on and off, which will make a little bit more sense in a second. And you even have a boost. Again, just for fun, if you press B, you can see that we are now boosted, and you can even spawn a ramp. There you go. And there's one more thing that I wanted to show you guys is because I have been testing these vehicles and adding things like these lights, I have also added the ability to change the time of day. So now, and again, this is more of a visualization mode. If you press T, we are going to see that we have different modes. This is the morning. You can see in the top left corner. We now have a mode that is in the morning, and you can see that the buildings automatically change their window materials to look like there are some lights that are being turned on. So if I press T again, this is now midday, kind of the default, and I press it again. Now this is like the late afternoon. You can see here. And then eventually I press T again, and this is more like the evening. And you can see why now it makes sense that I have lights. Even these street lights have actual lights, so you can see there. And if I go in, you can see that now we have an actual city at night. Now this isn't ideal, obviously, because I'm just changing the material for the buildings. But if you're trying to visualize how your city looks at different times of the day, this is just a convenient way of doing that. So yeah, this is kind of what I've been working on. This was a last minute thing. I didn't really plan to add this time of day system, but again, it's super simple. And the same for the buildings. I'm just replacing the material for the windows just to give you an idea of kind of how things look like at night. So yeah, that is where we are right now. There is one more feature when it comes to spawning the props. And after that, the 1.2 update will be ready. So I fully expect this to be done this week, and for me to submit the changes to Epic either this weekend or really early next week. And you guys should have the update by next week. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Hope you are excited. I am excited to give you guys the update. I feel like there is a lot packed into this update. So I think you're gonna notice a significant improvement in the presentation of your city, and you'll have more flexibility. And of course, as always, I will have tutorials once this comes out on how to use all of those features that I mentioned. Now we're gonna go over how to create destructible buildings so you can have a fully destructible city. We'll go over how to do the presets, how to configure some new props, pretty much anything that is new that requires us to go through the steps. I will be giving you step-by-step tutorials so you can take and make the most out of the assets. So yeah, that is pretty much it, guys. I hope you are excited. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in the video comments below. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys so much, and I'll talk to you in the next video.